It's Brian White's turn again, and he is. Are you into the stormy season yet up there in Washington? You getting some rain?
So much rain. Saturday was lake or treat where local businesses put up little tents and you walk the lake and get the candy. It was a good 9,000 steps I got in that day, something like that. And for half of it, it was beautiful looking. And for the other half, it was just pouring on us, which is what you expect this time of year. We've had quite a bit of just just wetness is what we've had.
I see. I see. You wouldn't be able to shift any of that down here to Southern California, I suppose.
No, I don't think it works that way, but we do get the power from it, which we sell to you at
Oh,
a premium. So
that's good.
congratulations.
Well, okay. So speaking of power and electric, I guess that is a great transition into
Mm,
electric vehicles. And one
mm.
of my favorite electric vehicles ever, even though I've never been a truck guy, I just didn't even, I'm not sure I even cared about trucks when I was three. I cared about cars and I was very into all the little cars, but I'm not sure I was ever like the big truck. Anyway, that story is getting boring. It's even boring me. So,
Wow.
so, so, so anyway, we've got some trucks being made over in the someplace in Nevada, some kind of a semi truck. What have you heard? What have you heard? What's going on over there?
What's the latest with the Tesla semi, you ask? That's a great question. And I'm sorry that you didn't have the luxury, as I did, of growing up in the Smokey and the Bandit era, which gave us about 3 months of joy in trucking and no more. Uh, so what's going on is the factory's coming along nicely. I, as you know, every week am covering the progress. Not as well as Zangler, the Tesla semi advocate, who's out there flying his drone, sometimes two, three times a week.
Mhm.
There is a lot going on. It's moving inside. Every week when we look at the new footage, we see more empty crates outside. And sometimes he'll do an early morning flight so he can peer in the windows. And you see the scissor lifts are in there. You see the drywall is going up in places where it's needed. You see they're installing the stamping equipment. The paint shop equipment showed up about a week and a half ago. Uh, all of that is exactly what you need to see. This is about a 2 million square foot facility, making it one of Tesla's smallest facilities, but it's also much, much bigger than some of the competition. Kenworth is, I think, under a 500,000 square feet in their Kent facility in Washington State. This is great. And then, of course, at I get all kinds of comments. Some of them are deeply negative and not necessarily based in truth. Can you believe that Tesla has delayed it again? And I say, no, I can't because they didn't say it was coming out in volume this year. Certainly not recently, not that I can recall, but they said that uh, keep an eye on it. And now they're saying first half of next year for trial production, volume production, end of next year. That fits with what we're seeing on the ground. Um, One question I had on it that I wanted to address was someone said, is this going to move the needle on the financials? And I thought, ooh, no, no, it's not. 50,000 units isn't that much. Um, it's the equivalent in terms of batteries, it's the equivalent of a 500,000 cars, thereabout. And if Tesla were to increase their volume by a 500,000 cars, we'd all be very excited
Mhm.
because we know what that means for the future. But in terms of today's financials, it doesn't move the needle quite as much. It would basically add a quarter of production to the automotive side, which would do very little to justify today's price to earnings ratio. So I think that what this is something that will be a cornerstone, much like energy. Energy is dependable. The energy sector at Tesla is dependable. It's not sexy, it's not exciting, but it just churns margin all day. I don't know what the margins are at the other trucking companies. I've tried to find out. It's
Oh,
very difficult because they are typically owned by much bigger companies.
mm.
And for them, it is also just a line item.
Mm.
PACCAR owns some of the biggest trucking manufacturers out there, but PACCAR is a massive international shipping conglomerate. Finding where their margin comes from takes a degree of skill I do not possess. If Tesla can get 10, 20, 30% margins on these, it'll work. And the other big question I wanted to address was people love to ask, are these actually going to sell? Can these be high volume vehicles? And the answer to that is, what's the price? I don't know what the price is. We haven't seen a price since 2017. And we know those 2017 numbers are not correct. We know that inflation alone has blown them out of the water, but more than likely the scope creep, this is a much better truck than what was originally promised, has also made it difficult. And there's an extent to which it may not even be necessary to have significantly better trucks, or significantly cheaper trucks, I mean.
Yeah, no, it should be.
Better is always good. But I could see them making a short range version. They're at 500 miles of range plus today. A 300-mile variant, if it's significantly cheaper, could be better. You'd also get.
I think they have actually suggested they're going to do that. I believe that was in the plan. Yeah.
I think it was in the original plan, but we haven't heard anything about it since then. That would be great for a lot of customers. It also would increase the amount of cargo you could carry because those batteries are very, very heavy. So not just expensive, but heavy. So the question there is on these, can they sell 50,000? That's the nameplate capacity. Can they even sell 50,000? That'd be 25% of the US market. And the answer is, at what price? There is a price at which absolutely they would sell. I mean, make them free, you'd sell all 200,000.
Well, but like a car, it's not about your landed cost of the actual vehicle. It's your cost of ownership. It's the cost per mile that really matters. And when you're when it's electric, the cost per mile drops a ton, not only because of the cost of the electricity being less than the cost of the diesel, but also because of the repairs and downtime for repairs and whatnot.
Absolutely all true, but there's still a number in there.
Yeah.
If this was prohibitively expensive, there are places that would still buy it. You can look at the electric Mack garbage truck. Mack makes a garbage truck that's all electric. Last I saw, they were selling for a bit north of $500,000. That's too expensive. But there are places that will buy them because our customers demand silent garbage trucks, and we got silent garbage trucks. But as the price comes down, as soon as the first big kickoff will be when total cost of ownership is less. And that might be at a 20 or 30 or 40% premium over a diesel big rig. And then the second kickoff is as it approaches retail price parity. Because there will be places in Massachusetts, energy is very expensive. Electricity is very expensive. If you're looking at it and saying, I have to spend $300,000 installing new equipment and getting line upgrades before I can even charge it, and then it's going to cost the same as gas, and then the state might ding me with higher registration because I'm not paying gas taxes, tougher sell there versus in the Northwest where we're approaching $5 a gallon, I'm told, well into the fours, I believe. I don't know. I don't buy that stuff. And our electricity is very cheap. In our region, I imagine electric trucks will get a toehold a lot quicker.
So then the other thing, of course, the biggest savings of all would be taking out the meat driver. And that would be not just on meat trucks, but also on, trucks that don't have meat. But yes, taking out the driver would be a dramatic reduction in cost and a dramatic increase in the usability, because now you can use it 24 hours a day without fatigue or whatever else. Maybe not 24, but let's call it 22 for fun.
20, 22, easy.
Right. Much more than trucks are used now. I did some research on this a while back, and the average truck isn't even used 8 hours a day because of the nature of hiring and firing and finding people that'll drive at night and all the rest of the stuff that you have to go through. And so if you have a dramatic increase in the number of hours per day, that's big. And then you take out the driver, that's huge. So people have been talking about, well, I mean, Brian Wang, for instance, who is definitely, my guy, my go-to guy on this is like, well, we'll start off with some kind of a driver in the front truck. We'll have a couple of trucks, be convoying behind that will just zero in on the front truck. And I'm like, okay, all right, okay. But then the other day we had an announcement from Tesla, and apparently as soon as these trucks are out there and as soon as 14.2 or whatever is finished, they're going to work on
That's
FCC.
so we've long talked about platooning as a possible solution,
Right.
but it doesn't sound like that's what Tesla wants to do. Uh, I can see why Tesla would view that as a crutch. And part of the problem is a platoon doesn't always make sense. Um, now you've got to not just plan a driver and a truck, but a driver and 4 trucks,
Right.
all going to about the same place at about the same time. I understand the added complication. And the reality is, if there's traffic, the trucks are going to get separated a bit. And at that point, you need not just follow the leader autonomy, you need true autonomy. So that makes sense to me. And once you get into a truly driverless truck, the entire dynamics of trucking changes. You could have your shipment on the way to Omaha, and it says, oh, wow, when I get there in 6 hours, there's going to be a 14-minute delay before my number is up and I can charge. I'm going to reduce my speed by 14 minutes over the next 6 hours. That means I'm only going 2 miles an hour slower.
Yeah.
But you know what efficiency gain you get from 2 miles an hour?
Yeah.
And how much time did you lose? None, not 1 minute, because you would still have to wait there for
Right.
those 10 to 14 minutes when you arrive. So all of that is going to change. And I know people love to complain about big rigs going too slow.
Mhm.
They don't complain about that when they're on big, flat, open, wide stretches. They complain about it on hills. Forget that. That doesn't happen. If the optimal speed to climb a hill for a truck is 50, it'll be going 50, or 60, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, you could go 80 probably.
You could go 80,
Right, right.
but unless it's a long straight incline, I don't want them going 80. The big danger is trucks going too fast. That's where problems occur. Runaway truck ramps are not as common as they used to be. And it's not because trucks have gotten that much better. It's because road design has gotten that much better.
Mm.
And by the way, my friend's high school buddy, his dad invented the runaway truck ramp. It's a claim to fame. Every time he sees me, he's like, yeah. It's a lot of fun. But this will change everything. If now a ground shipment coast to coast is 48 hours, a ground shipment, you can move big, heavy things up to, 50,000-ish pounds, because when it's an oversized load, now you're dealing with a different logistical challenge. You're going to have people involved in that for a long time. But anything that's a standard load, ship it. It's done.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, in fact, people were asking questions the other day in someplace on X or somewhere, will the semi trucks replace trains?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the answer to that is no, but they will potentially compete with trains. More, I mean, they've always competed with trains. They'll compete even more effectively because they'll be so much less expensive.
They'll be moving a ton of freight on rail is very cheap, but it's also very slow, because even though it doesn't have to contend with traffic, it has to contend with network congestion and the logistics of getting the train cars hooked up, loaded, unloaded, all that. And as I don't remember, was it Lars who pointed out? Someone on the earnings call pointed out, the last mile is what matters.
Yeah.
Very few companies have a rail terminal to their location. And for the companies that already have a rail terminal to their location, trucks will never compete.
Right.
You are not going to be moving grain from Iowa to the port of Los Angeles via rail or via road. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
They've got rail terminals all the way connecting them, and the volume I've seen grain silos that barely have roads attached to them, just enough for a pickup truck to get up there and check on things.
Mhm.
Certainly not enough to get in an endless parade of Class 8 trucks. It wouldn't make sense for that application. So, and the rail's already built. The marginal cost of keeping it is inconsequential compared to the cost of, uh, building new rail.
Yeah, and in this book that we wrote, AI Rising, one of the things that people are wondering about is we use the word abundance. How to thrive in the age of abundance, and people are like, well, what do you really mean about this abundance, and how are things going to get less expensive? And people don't realize how much cost freight adds to what they're doing. So I currently sell products through Amazon. And I was this morning, I'm looking at the freight and I'm going, what happened here? And I got an item that sells for $10. I got one of the cheapest item I sell is $9.95. And the freight to ship that to Santa Monica from Riverside is $4.40. Well,
Yeah,
if you can find a way to get that freight down to $2.20, guess what? You just saved 20% on that item.
I
Well,
will. Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
do have a thing to address on that. I saw someone saying all this talk about, because we had our conversation yesterday about sodium batteries, all this cost about reducing battery costs is ridiculous. We're never going to see the savings. The company will just eat that profit. And I say that's not how it works in automotive. And that's not how it works in a lot of sectors. In automotive, you watched Henry Ford cut the cost of the Model T down from thousands to hundreds, and he passed on the savings because if he didn't, he'd have gone out of business. And the reality with cars is they're always trying to squeeze another nickel out. Well, yeah, but they want to keep that nickel. They do. Go look at their financials. There's no nickels to keep.
Right.
The auto industry is famously a single digit margin industry. Those savings are passed on to you. When they make the new iPhone cheaper and cheaper, yes, you are getting a computer in your pocket. And by the way, if you have the new 17 Ultra Pro Max, whatever iPhone, uh, it is as powerful as the world's fastest supercomputer from 2005.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, Randy, but you are not consuming megawatts to use your computer. Uh,
Yeah.
you're it's watts.
And
So
and the information that's available to me on that computer is way more than that supercomputer at that time.
I made an article years ago assessing what percentage of the 1989 Radio Shack catalog was available on your phone. How much of that catalog was replaced? And it was, I don't remember the number now, but it was like, and you got to skip the 30 pages of diodes in the middle because that's not relevant. But all of the gadgets and gizmos had been replaced by your phone and in ways that were substantially better, infinitely better. Um, those savings do get to you. And when we're talking about shipping, you can say, well, I'm not going to see that benefit, right? But if they cut 30 billion out of the cost of shipping, do you think those companies just have 30 billion a year now? And they would love to. They don't. They pass it on because if they don't, their competitors will.
Right, 100%. Yeah, and so I think Brian Wang again did a study, did an analysis, and when we get to autonomous, when it's all autonomous, it's going to be years. This transition is going to be not going to take a year or two or three, but when we get to where most food, let's say, is now, and think about food, you got to pay for the
I'm always thinking about food,
you always think
Randy.
about it. You got to pay for the transportation of the seed and the fertilizer to the farmer. Now you got to pay after the food is you got a tractor out there that could be autonomous, that's actually planting and then harvesting. Now you take the harvested product and you've got to take it either to a silo, as you point out, or possibly directly to a processing facility. Maybe that processing facility is packaging too, but maybe not. Maybe they're just processing it into a finished product and it goes somewhere else for packaging. Now you go from packaging to potentially a distributor. I sold to the grocery industry. Sometimes you're selling it to a distributor. Sometimes it's going directly to the retail store. So you might have 5 or 6 vehicles involved in the production of that food. It isn't the cost to take that seed and turn it into a plant. It's all this other stuff that happens that makes food expensive. So Brian thought that there might be a 30% cost reduction in food as a result.
Hmm. That Yes, when you look at food, you're not paying for the sunlight. And in depending on the crop, you might not even be paying for the water. It might just be rainfall. The cost is harvest and delivery. There was a book written a few years back, probably 10 years back now. A gentleman said, I'm going to make a chicken sandwich, a crispy chicken sandwich from scratch. And so he said, well, it's easy. I'm going to go to a farm and get a baby chick and raise it. And it's like, okay, so I got that part. Well, now I've got to butcher the chicken,
Yeah.
meaning I need to make a knife. Oh my gosh. And then he's like, okay, so to make the bun, I can grow wheat. That's easy enough.
Yeah.
How do I mill wheat? Ooh, I have to build an oven. And you realize how many
Yeah.
pieces
Yeah.
of the puzzle there are. You take them for granted because someone built them before you. So
Yes, I was in the clothing business for a little while, and it became evident that somebody has to make everything, and the one that got me was the zipper. And so you're not only talking about a zipper, but somebody is making the little tab at the top of the zipper. I
yeah.
mean, it's like, every single thing has to be made, and it all has to come together. And that all that supply chain thing is what Tesla is outstanding at, which is one of the reasons that Tesla is as good at what they do as they are.
If you change animal policies in your country, do you still have the correct glue for the zipper?
Yeah, there you go.
Everything is connected in ways we don't understand. There was some video I saw. I don't know. It might have been Milton Friedman or someone, but he was saying you think things are local and easy, and his example was a pencil,
Yeah.
and he started explaining where all the bits come from, and you're like, ooh, did
Yeah.
not think of this.
Yeah, another one. I'm sorry to keep the conversation going, but maybe you guys are enjoying this. Another crazy one that I got involved in was glue. You just mentioned glue, or adhesives. It's amazing how many different chemistries you have to have of adhesives, because everything that you're trying to stick together, it doesn't work on that surface. It works fine on that surface, but not on this surface. So now you have to find one that works on this surface and that surface, and
At
then
which temperature?
at which temperature and under what kind of duress,
Uh-huh.
and on and on and on. And so being an expert in adhesives is a pretty important position.
I talked to someone who was a because if we're going off topic, was a puppeteer, and they toured the whole West Coast doing their puppet shows. And then someone invited them to do a puppet show in the Southwest. And when they got out of their car in Arizona, they found all their puppets had come unglued
Oh,
because the car got to what, 150, 160 parked in the sun.
maybe
And
that's how road rage happens, is people become unglued in the heat.
that's probably it, is they don't have the correct binders.
Yeah, I think we'll end it there, Brian. I mean, that's about as funny as it gets. So let's stop.
Yeah.
It's been great talking to you. Thanks, Brian.